Hi everybody, welcome to another DecodeMe webinar. My name is Sonya Chowdhury. I'm Chief Executive of Action for ME and I'm also part of the DecodeMe team. So I'm going to be sort of chairing the webinar today. I'm going to start off by giving you a bit of an update, and then I'm going to hand over to Chris, who's going to explain how you actually take part in this study. And then Sian's going to tell you about the work that we've done with patient-public involvement at the heart to develop our new DecodeMe questionnaire. It's an improved questionnaire and it's been developed on the back of feedback that we've had from our first group of people that have helped us refine what we do and how we do it. So we began our online testing phase in June, and we randomly selected 500 people who'd registered their interest via the website. And if you haven't done that already, please go and do that at decodeme.org.uk. You'll be first in line to hear when the full recruitment launches. So it's really important that you do that if you want to get ahead. So we had 500 people who were selected to take part in this phase 1 testing, and they signed up and completed the questionnaire, and they were also asked to give us feedback to tell us what we could do better. This has been really useful. It was mostly positive, and the majority of people told us that it was easy or very easy to use the questionnaire, and the questions were easy to understand. But we got some really interesting feedback, which we've been able to act on as well. Some of those participants were also sent spit kits, and Chris will tell you more about what that means in a minute. And they've been providing their DNA samples. It was really exciting for us as the DecodeMe team, and we're a massive team. It's really exciting to hear that the first spit kits and saliva samples had then been received and were being processed. So they're still coming back to us. People are taking a bit of time to complete all the steps that they need to, but those numbers are increasing day by day. The other thing that we want to tell you is that we are going to launch in September. We have waited, you have waited a long time. You've been so patient in supporting us and giving us time to make sure that we get this as good as we possibly can, with patient and public involvement right at the very heart. And I have to say, I think, you know, all of us would agree, and the scientists that we've been speaking to outside of the study, our scientific advisory panel, have all said that the quality of science is so much better because of the patient and public involvement, right from those that are working within the team to our social media ambassadors that are working to support us with recruitment, and through to a large number of you that have contributed to questionnaires and surveys, giving us feedback at various points over the last couple of years. So before I hand over to Chris, we want to say a huge thank you to you, and we are really, really excited about launching in September. If you've signed up and registered your interest, you will get information a little bit ahead of everybody else, and we will confirm the date very soon. So I'm now going to hand over to Chris, who will introduce himself and tell you about how you can take part.
Hello all, I'm just going to share my screen and hopefully you'll see my slides now. So my name is Chris Ponting. I'm a human genetics researcher at the University of Edinburgh. And I'm very excited because we're now almost at the full launch of DecodeMe, and it feels as if we all together have climbed several mountains to get to this exciting position. So you may have followed previous webinars where we've talked about the DNA side of the DecodeMe project. So if you go to these other webinars, you'll see how we have designed the project so that people who are selected to be part of that side of the project receive the sample collection kits and then donate the saliva sample, put it back in the regular post, and off it goes for the processing, and eventually we in Edinburgh get the data and analyze it. We'll be comparing people with ME and their DNA against control individuals whose data we already have from the UK Biobank. So today I want to say something a bit different from that. I want to talk to you about three things. I want to talk about how taking part in DecodeMe is more than donating DNA. That's the first thing. Then the second thing I want to say is that your questionnaire answers are important to us and important beyond DecodeMe. And finally, I want to say what a challenge it is to recruit the number of people, I'm going to say 50,000 people with in the UK with ME, who we need to complete the new DecodeMe questionnaire. So we'll need everyone's help, your help, please, to help us achieve this very difficult goal. So let me start by talking about genetics, and to say that we know that more than one gene is disrupted in people with ME. There will be many genes, and each of those will contribute just a little to someone's risk of being diagnosed with ME. So this gives us a spectrum. We know that ME genetics, therefore, is not black or white, it's a spectrum. And it gives us this scientific problem. Because it's a spectrum, where does our study, DecodeMe, draw the line? On one side will be people who are included in the study with respect to the DNA, and everyone is included in the study with respect to the questionnaire and questionnaire answers. We have to draw a line between those two. We have to draw a line somewhere. And the reason is that all scientific studies are based on criteria, and we have to stick to the science. So the obvious question is, well, what criteria? Well, this was decided a long time ago, November 2019. All together in a room, scientists, people with ME, carers, funders, we all met and decided to use the IOM and CCC criteria for people who have been clinically diagnosed. And that went off to peer review, and peer reviewers said that that is exactly the right approach. So people with ME will be on one side of the line. We'll be asking you for your DNA sample. What we never knew, given the criteria, was what fraction of people we would ask for their DNA. We didn't know this until we started asking people questions through the new DecodeMe questionnaire. So that fraction that we asked for DNA could be any number. It could be a small fraction, or it could be a much larger fraction. We actually never knew. Turns out from the testing that Sonya was talking about, it's about 60%. 60% of you who complete the questionnaire and consent to participate will spit for science, spit for DecodeMe, and donate your saliva sample for DNA that will be read out, and we can then compare against healthy controlled DNA. But my message really today is for everyone in this circle, not just for those who donate their DNA to DecodeMe. We actually need about 50,000 people, and actually probably more. 50,000 people in the UK with ME to successfully complete DecodeMe and its objectives. So by taking part, every single person who completes our questionnaire provides information that I think will be hugely valuable to science. Well, why? Well, it could reveal subgroups. As I said, it's a spectrum. So it may be that there will be subgroups where there'll be one group will have a particular genetic cause and another group will have another genetic cause or set of causes. And your answers to the questionnaire would enable us to do that analysis. And then also your answers are a powerful record of your symptoms and your life experience, which we don't take for granted. So if you provide consent, we then have a vast database with thousands of people's life experience, which will be available to researchers to better understand what your lives are, what living with ME means to you. And when I say that, I have to say that you will perhaps always have to remember that we will always protect your data and provide your data to researchers in an anonymous way. And that's very important to us and to you, I know. So many people, researchers, clinicians, government, science, society at large, friends, families, I've heard that they misunderstand what it means to live with ME. Single anecdotes provide powerful testimonies, but it's the big data, in my view, that counts. And it's the transformative power of that data for tens of thousands of people living with ME that together, I don't think we should underestimate. So, for example, with this vast data set in hand, DecodeMe can provide more precise evidence on the scale, the demographics, the comorbidities, the severity, and the impact of living with ME for people in the UK. It will help us create the world's biggest set of data on ME, helping researchers, other researchers, understand the disease better. It might help also to show politicians and doctors who often misunderstand the illness, how disabling the illness is. So my message is taking part in DecodeMe is more than donating your DNA. And as I said, 60% of you will be asked to donate your DNA. But this is a large number. 50,000 people of people in the UK with ME is about 1/5 of all people with ME in the UK. Now, one thing I've learned about you all is how committed and tenacious you are. And without you, DecodeMe will be nothing. So this is your study. It's about you, with you, and we as scientists will deliver the best possible project to provide the best chance of providing new research directions leading to effective therapies. When you take the questionnaire, on average, and when you complete it, it'll take you about 12 minutes to complete if you're mildly affected, and 20 minutes if you're severely affected, on average. It may take some people much longer than that. So we also have people on standby to help with completion of the questionnaire. And it would help us enormously if you could try out the online questionnaire first. And if this doesn't work for you, that's fine. Please ask for a paper questionnaire or ask for someone from the 25% group to help you to complete the question. So when we launch fully in September, please do complete the questionnaire and tell everyone you know and ask them to do so too. We need a snowball effect where everyone from up and down the country know about DecodeMe and participate and know why it's important to participate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. I just want to remind everybody that you can ask us questions. We'll try our very best to be able to answer them. We've got 200 participants here on Zoom, and we've got others that have joined us on Facebook Live, and you'll be able to share this or view this afterwards, particularly if an hour is too much for you to watch all in one go. So before we go to questions and answers, I'm going to hand over to Sian, who's going to tell you a bit more about the questionnaire.
Hello, everyone. It's fantastic to be speaking to you all today and see so many people watching. My name is Sonya Leary, and I've lived with ME for over 9 years now. I spent the first 4 to 5 years severely affected, but I'm fortunate to be in a better period at the moment. And I've been a member of the Patient and Public Involvement Steering Group for DecodeMe since funding for the study started. And I just, want to say that I continue to be impressed at the extent to which people with ME and carers are at the heart of decision making. This has had a huge impact on the study overall, with decisions small and large all being influenced by the lived experience of this disease. There's national guidelines out there on how best to do patient and public involvement, but from my reading of them and understanding of other studies, we are truly setting a gold standard in DecodeMe, and I am hopeful that will be mirrored in future ME research. As a member of DecodeMe, ME, and a person with ME, I'm now also joining the research subgroup of the government's delivery plan alongside Sonya and Chris to ensure that what we have learned from DecodeMe is shared. We will all push for the targets that are set, the commitments that are made, and the research that is taken forward to reflect the severity and impact of this disease, as well as the historical lack of research funding that ME has received. But I'm actually here to tell you about the DecodeMe questionnaire and algorithm today. So Chris has gone into this a bit, but I hope you don't mind if I repeat some of what he said by explaining why we even have a questionnaire. And the first reason is that we're gathering a hugely rich data set about people with ME in the UK. This is going to be able to tell the story of symptom severity, onset, diagnosis, and more. And all of this information is vital to fighting for people with ME, for proving beyond a shadow of a doubt the impact of this disease, and for changing hearts and minds, as well as giving us scientific clues to pinpoint pathology, hopefully find treatments and do more. It's going to be an incredible advocacy tool. And the second reason we have a questionnaire is that we're using it alongside our DecodeMe algorithm to tell us who we will be asking for a DNA sample. Back in January this year, we started recruiting a really small number of participants into our offline paper-based process. We did this because we wanted to target people with severe ME and those who might be harder to reach. And we asked them all to fill in a feedback form about their experience of going through the questionnaire and the general process. This was hugely enlightening to us and showed that we still need to do further work to improve the questionnaire. I'm not going to tell you it's now 100% perfect, but I do think the work we've done has made a major difference and that the end result is inclusive to those of all severities and encompasses different experiences of ME. The vast majority of those who sent in feedback said they were having to read questions multiple times to understand them, while many also said they found the questionnaire easy or very easy to fill in. There were enough who were confused by specific questions that we felt we needed to go back and rethink them. Lots of simple changes have been made to ensure the questions were appropriate to as many participants as possible, like asking for city/town of birth instead of just saying city. And one of the big issues we've tackled, and one that I think is vitally important, and I know many in the community do, is how we are assessing post-exertional malaise. We know this is a key area, and it's particularly important to differentiate between the global increase in symptoms and decrease in functioning that we see in post-exertional malaise, in comparison to the tiredness and muscle soreness that we see in exertional intolerance. By having people with ME and carers as part of this process, we believe we have been better able to tease apart these two phenomena. We've had long discussions around how to assess post-exertional malaise in mild ME and very severe ME simultaneously, and believe our questionnaire now works better for everyone. On expert advice, we've also decided to ask about a few additional comorbidities in the questionnaire. We took this decision because we know among our patient and public involvement team and the many people with ME that we personally know that comorbidities often have a huge impact on quality of life and can be difficult to get diagnoses for. This will again improve the data we are getting and help us understand more about the experience of a broad cohort of people with ME. Past research suggests as many as 90% of people with ME are diagnosed with at least one other comorbid illness. We'll be able to see if this is true of our cohort, and information like this could again help us working towards understanding treatment options and their impact. As Chris said, we're using the Institute of Medicine and Canadian consensus criteria to help us decide whether we should also be asking a participant to send us their DNA on top of their questionnaire answers. But these criteria weren't originally designed or operationalized into a questionnaire. Assessing some of their requirements is difficult, and we've had to work really hard to be sure that the questions we are asking in the DecodeMe questionnaire are understood in the way intended in the IOM and CCC criteria. But all of this work means that we will have a better data set to use alongside our DNA analysis. For instance, we may find that certain symptom groupings are more likely to occur if a person has certain differences in their DNA. This could help us subgroup people with ME and understand more about whether there are different pathways causing the same or different symptoms in different people. Another focus for us has been ensuring accessibility of the online system. We've insisted throughout that there must be a really easy function to save your answers partway through so that you can come back to it at a later date. And I'm really pleased to say that this is working really well now. And as Sonya was describing, we've had our first cohort of participants going through the questionnaire online. And while a few niggles have come up, we've been able to address these, and we are overall really proud of this piece of work. The feedback we're getting is mostly really positive, and people are finding it easy to work their way through the participant information first, the consent form, and then the full questionnaire. I want to also say that we're proud to be making this questionnaire available to any other researchers who wish to use it, so that we can see the massive amount of input from people with ME and carers that has gone into this questionnaire, put into use time and again in the future. We think this will be a fantastic resource for other researchers and help to improve future research so that we can be more certain that we are researching homogeneous cohorts. And then on a personal note, I think the results from this questionnaire could have a real impact on how ME is viewed by health professionals and other people across the world. I'm really hopeful that charities and other advocacy organisations will use the results to create resources that educate health professionals about the true reality of living with ME, and that the mass of data we collect will be hard to argue with. So as soon as we open recruitment fully in September, please do take part in DecodeMe if you have a diagnosis of ME, CFS or ME/CFS. Complete the questionnaire to help us create this amazing resource of data. And if we also need you to send us your DNA, please do post it back. The next stage of DecodeMe has been a long time coming, and I am so excited it is finally here, and that we can be really confident that this will be a powerful and robust study. So thank you for sticking with us, for listening to me today, for coming to these webinars, and for all that you will continue to do to support this fantastic project. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sian, and thank you, Chris. We've got lots of questions coming in, which is fantastic. As always, we'll try our best to answer as many of them. But just to remind you as well, we do have a frequently asked questions on the DecodeMe website. So if you want to, you can go and read more there. All of the responses have been developed with patient public involvement and the scientists. So we've worked together as a team to pull those together. We're not in a position to answer lots of individual questions outside of the webinars, but we do try and put responses into the frequently asked questions and ensure that they're kept up to date. So we've got questions from Facebook, through Zoom, and also some that were sent through previously. So I'm going to ask you a question first, Chris, because this has come up quite a lot in the chat as well. Are you planning on including overseas patients as well for the study?
We are not at the beginning planning to recruit from overseas. So there is a good scientific reason for that, in that we could have spent hard-earned taxpayers' money on the data that comes from healthy people, because we need the data from healthy people to compare against people with ME, but we chose not to. We chose to compare against the data from the 500,000 strong UK biobank cohort that already exists. And a byproduct of that decision to spend our money only on people with ME is because UK biobank people are people from the UK, we have to match against people of the UK. In other words, we have to ask first people with ME from the UK. So whereas I would absolutely love to widen the study to other countries, I think that would be difficult at this stage. But I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. There would be challenges because of postal systems being different, etc. But we would and we would wish to do that in the longer term. But at the beginning of the study, it will be for people with ME, diagnosed with ME, who live in the UK.
Thank you, Chris. And just a reminder, we're looking for people who are over the age of 16 and live in the UK. And if you want to register your interest, so you're first in line when we do launch in September, you can do that on the DecodeMe website. So another question for you, Chris. I'm having difficulty getting enough air into my lungs. Has any research been done in this area? And Sian, chip in as well if you want to.
Yeah, I read that about half the people with ME have shortness of breath. And I know that people with long COVID often report this too. And then I also read that there are theories that explain this, such as microclots existing in blood vessels that are in the lungs and reduce oxygen exchange. And this could be true for people with ME and people with long COVID. The good thing about DecodeMe and the genetics that we're looking at is that it looks at everything, all of the genes, all of the DNA, and it does that blinded, really, to any prejudice that anyone might have. And that objective approach means that whatever is the strongest genetic signal that's out there has the best chance of being found by the study. And it may be that it reveals something that is going wrong in the lungs, but it may also be that it'll be something that's going wrong elsewhere. We'll find out, hopefully.
Thank you, Chris. We've got quite a few questions from people saying, have I already filled in the questionnaire? So just to let you know that if you've pre-registered your interest on our website, the DecodeMe website, you've given us information to help us build the study. When we launch the recruitment in September, you will be sent a link, and then you will follow that link and you'll be able to complete the questionnaire. We've got a question, Sian, about the questionnaire. Somebody has said that they're actually going to be away in September, and how long will they have to complete it? Maybe you'd like to answer that one for us.
Sure, and I think that's one of the great things about the questionnaire is that we've made it open-ended, so you have as long as you need to complete it, basically. So if you're not around in September, then do it in October or November. If you need to take a long time to do it, there is absolutely no pressure to do it quickly, and you'll still be involved. So yeah, we're pleased with the systems we have in place to allow you to save your progress and come back to it. You can come back the next day, next week, the next month. We understand that it's different for people with ME for many reasons and different circumstances. So take part in your own time, but please do take part.
Thank you, Sian. We've got a number of questions around comorbidities. First of all, and I think probably Chris and then Sian for you to add anything. Somebody has asked what a comorbidity is. And then we've got questions that are asking if you've received a diagnosis, say with hypothyroidism, or other diseases, can you participate? Are there any possible medications available? So we can't answer questions about medications. We're not qualified to do so. So that's something I'm afraid we'll have to redirect you to a health professional. But also, if you highly suspect you've got a comorbidity, say, for example, mast cell activation syndrome, but are as yet undiagnosed, can you participate?
So let's start with a comorbidity. What it means is that you may have a medical condition in addition to having ME. So people might have hypothyroidism, which is what Sonya referred to, as well as ME. And we're wanting and hoping for everyone in the UK who have been diagnosed with ME by a medical professional, irrespective of what else you've been diagnosed with, to participate in DecodeMe. But the questionnaire has to ask questions about what else you've been diagnosed with, just in case your symptoms can be better explained by something else than it can be by ME. And that's really one of the major reasons why we have to employ the questionnaire and the criteria.
I think I would jump in and add a bit about medication. Part of what this study is doing is looking at genes. It's very unlikely that medication is going to impact that. So we don't ask about the medications that you're on in the questionnaire, and it's not something you need to know at this stage. So if you're concerned about whether that impacts you taking part, you don't need to be.
Right, thank you. So question here, Chris, I wanted to ask about autism, as autism burnout and ME sensory overload are so similar. I've recently been diagnosed with autism and it was a light bulb moment. How similar are they neurologically? I wondered if you'll be looking at this.
Unfortunately, science knows very little about ME. It knows a little bit more about autism spectrum disorder nowadays. It didn't previously. And because we know so little about ME, we don't know about the overlap with autism, particularly neurologically. Genetically, DecodeMe provides the opportunity to look at the overlaps and the distinctions. Actually, not just with autism. DecodeMe will look at the overlap or the separation of ME with every type of disease. So it's a study that not just says what are the genetic risk factors for ME, but what are the common risk factors common to ME and other things. And people will ask about long COVID. We'll ask whether there's an overlap with long COVID or not an overlap, a distinction with long COVID. Are they different? My guess is they're going to be overlapping and different, if you know what I mean. All through the genetics and all through the data that it comes from the DNA that you provide. And all in a way that is completely objective and not prejudiced by previous studies and hypotheses.
Thank you. And just to say that we will be analysing the data within 2 years in terms of once you've completed the questionnaire. Even though we are opening recruitment later than we had hoped, we're still going to complete our study on time. We're very confident that we will have completed this study within the time frame. We're awarded 4 years, and that will be August 2024. Get my dates right there. So there's, Chris, you mentioned about long COVID and potential overlaps and potential differences. We've had a few questions here about whether you can link the results to any research to be done on long COVID because of those similarities. And this individual said it'd be a shame if it wouldn't be possible in the future to utilise your results because of the anonymisation of data.
Thank you for this question and every question, actually. We will not hold our data to our chests, right? We will make it available in an anonymous way to bona fide researchers everywhere. If we don't do an analysis here in Edinburgh, we hope that others will. In order to ensure that progress is made in ME research and long COVID research or whatever, we don't give out enough information for people to find out who each of the participants is. And that's a key thing. We don't provide person identifiable information. But we provide enough information on aggregate of you all that questions can be asked about the commonalities and the differences with other diseases. And we will not put up barriers for any researcher to come to us who are wanting to use the data. Rather, we will be going out there, seeking out people who will make use of the data. And that process has already started.
We are really committed to being as transparent as possible, and that's why we want to make sure that we have the frequently asked questions on our website, the webinars we're doing, and we want people to be able to utilise our learning, the things that we've developed through this study, because we all want to see science accelerated. We need to see the improvements and treatments and the understanding about ME for the 250,000 people and possibly more in the UK and 30 million worldwide that are affected by this. Chris, we've had a few questions about the relationships within families and whether ME is hereditary. So there's a couple of questions here. Could ME be hereditary or gut related? And then presumably the questionnaire is going to ask about whether there's a family history of ME. I wonder if we've taken into account how frequently the condition is misdiagnosed, both now and especially in the past.
Okay, I think there's 3 different things there. There's the gut question. And yes, there's been a hypothesis called the leaky gut hypothesis that says that people with ME tend to leak bacteria and toxins from the gut into the blood. Now that is a hypothesis, but it really needs a bit more evidence for it to be considered definitive. So the second thing was, is there evidence for an inheritance of risk for someone to be diagnosed with ME? Is it more likely that their relatives, their blood relatives, are going to be diagnosed with ME? And the answer is yes, we know that already from previous studies. First degree, second degree, third degree relatives are more likely to have ME. Are we going to use that information in the questionnaire? Actually, we're not asking you for that information. I'll tell you why. The reason is that if you have the DNA of one person and another family member, you can tell their relationship. And just from analyzing the DNA variants. And so we do that across the whole population of people with ME, looking at the relatedness of individuals. And we'll use that relatedness to determine how much of the risk for ME diagnosis is inherited. But we also use that to find out which of the pieces of the DNA are different in people with ME versus healthy controls. Did I miss a question? I can't remember.
I don't think so.
Okay.
We've got a question about what happens after ME is decoded. Is this when us who aren't officially diagnosed yet might be able to get tested? And what does the timeline look like for this?
So unfortunately, because it's a spectrum, there is not a single gene that is disrupted. There is not an easy DNA test that says, yes, you have ME or no, you don't have ME, unfortunately. And it's in that it is exactly the same as other diseases. A lot of autoimmune diseases, for example, multiple sclerosis is one. Rather, we think of DecodeMe as providing, first of all, evidence that it is biological in origin. Secondly, that we know what's going wrong in cells. Thirdly, which cells and what might be going wrong in molecules in those cells, so that we can go to the experts who are researching those molecules in those cells to tell them that they should be researching why people with ME have changes in those molecules. And that then the next stage beyond that is that drug targets can be developed that can then go to clinical testing. And it's a sad fact, I wish it wasn't the case, that this is a process that will take a long time. It's estimated 10 years and more, perhaps. But we have to start somewhere, and we have to keep going as fast as we can to ensure that we get to that finishing line as soon as we can. And geneticists are only at the beginning, at the starting line of this whole process. But we are trying to turbocharge the process to make it ensure it happens as fast as possible.
Thank you, Chris. Sean, I'm going to ask you a question. This is about the questionnaire. And the individual wants to know, will the questionnaire differentiate about symptoms when uncontrolled or when managed by pacing? They then go on to explain they've learned a lot about their own limits when pacing and sticking to baseline. Symptoms subside drastically, reasonably switched on, etc. But when they don't pace, they're 100% housebound, 50% bedbound. So clearly there's that differential, and I know that fluctuation in symptoms is something that many people with ME experience. So the individual says they would fill in the questionnaire differently based on those two scenarios. Can you just tell us a little bit about how that's going to be managed within the questionnaire?
So that's a really good question, and something we've had to think about a lot since January this year. And I've talked to people within the patient and public involvement team about how to manage this issue, because of course things do fluctuate hugely. And throughout the questionnaire, we've included a few little tooltips that help explain some of the questions when they could very easily be answered differently depending on whether you're pacing or not. And we try to ask people to think about what would happen if they weren't pacing on the whole. So we're aiming to give clarity and advice around how to answer those questions, so that hopefully you can do it in a way that reflects your experience of ME.
Right, thank you, Sean. And I've got a question here from somebody on Facebook. They want to know whether receiving chemotherapy for cancer would exclude them from participating. Chris?
That particular part of their medical care will not exclude them from participating. No.
And what happens if we don't get 50,000 participants? Will the study still go ahead?
We'll work harder. We have to.
Yeah. We are absolutely committed to getting the numbers that we need to. We have worked really hard on our recruitment plans, and this is where you can help us. Everybody watching can help play a part in ensuring that we get the number of people to fill in the questionnaire, the number of people that will then be invited to go on and provide the spit kits and to provide a saliva sample. And as Chris said, every bit of data you provide is helpful for science, regardless of what you end up providing. But the one thing you absolutely can do is help us recruit more people. So tell everybody about the DecodeMe study. If you know people with ME, encourage them to participate. With your help, we will reach that 50,000 people and potentially more. And we, as Chris said, this is the start. We will need more data. We want other scientists, replicating this study and expanding this study and taking it into other countries, because we need to gain a better understanding. So please do support us with that. Chris, I'm going to ask you a question about the DNA samples. When they're collected, what will be the time frame for the first pass results or findings to be given into government, into the government spearhead group that's been mentioned?
Yes. So the first DNA results will probably come out in the first quarter of next year, and then we'll receive them. And if we have a really good response from the full launch in September, then that may be enough for us to do the first analysis. And that will definitely be within the time frame of the Department of Health and Social Care group that has been put together. And that will feed into that process. And we are involved in that process. And so we will be making sure that everything that people have funneled through us and everything that we think as being important is front and center in that process.
Thank you. I've had a few more questions around when the questionnaire is going to be available and have people filled it in. The questionnaire will be available in September. It's very unlikely that you filled it in. The only people that will have filled it in were those that were invited as part of the phase 1 study, and you would have had a specific link to follow and a specific reference number to input. What you will have completed is our registering of interest through the DecodeMe website. And if you haven't done that, please go in and fill that form in. We will keep you updated and we will let you know when the recruitment launches, and you will be first in line. You need to be over 16 to participate, and at this point you need to be in the UK to take part. Chris?
If you've registered and you forget, and that's fine, we all do that, and you try and register again, we'll know, we'll tell you. It's all fine. You might need to change your password or whatever, but please keep and persevere, because the system is built to help you with that.
And as Sian said in her presentation, we have worked really, really hard to try and make sure that we put things in place that will help you, not just help any of us, but also in recognition of the differing, fluctuating symptoms that people with ME experience. So question here, if specific abnormalities do show up in the future, could healthy siblings of ME sufferers be asked to donate spit samples to help narrow down exactly what is going on in ME? Chris?
So we would need to do another piece of science first. The science that we're doing here is trying to find common explanations for ME. And that is not going to reveal common disruptions in single genes. It's a spectrum we talked about earlier. But we have made sure that we'll keep half of every person's DNA sample that you donate. And the reason is this, that we'll do the next piece of science, which is to read out every single bit of your DNA, which may reveal the rare changes that might only be in your family, that no one else has. And when we do that, there might be strong signals that individual genes are often disrupted differently in different people, but it's the same gene. And if that is the case, then there could, yes, be a blood test, a DNA test that people would have to spit for science for and test for that change and to see whether it's there in family members. But not yet, not for this first stage of what we're doing.
That's great. Got a question here that somebody said, can I complete the form from abroad? I live in the UK but be away for a few months. Yes, you can. So please do complete that. You need to be living in the UK if that's your permanent address, but happen to be out of the country, you can complete that. We've got quite a few questions about diagnosis, so I'm going to try and bulk them together and then Chris and Sian can answer them. The first one is, I've been diagnosed with post-viral fatigue syndrome, but believe I meet the CCC criteria. Can I sign up? The next one is, my GP thinks I have ME. A neurologist thought I had ME, referred me to a rheumatologist who thought I couldn't have ME because I would not be able to get out of bed, which we know is wrong. So does 2 out of 3 count as a diagnosis and allow me to participate?
So I believe the question in the questionnaire asked whether a health professional has diagnosed you with ME, ME/CFS or CFS. That's the question. It doesn't say whether 7 out of 8 or 2 out of 6 or whatever. It says, has a health professional diagnosed you with ME, CFS or ME/CFS?
And if you've been diagnosed with post-viral fatigue syndrome?
So that is not identical to ME, ME/CFS or CFS.
Great.
Doesn't mean that you can't take the questionnaire, but yeah, we'll still give us information that you'll answer the question, that specific question on diagnosis. Well, yeah, you'll say you won't have a diagnosis of ME/CFS or ME/CFS.
And there will be people who would deserve, because of their symptoms, a diagnosis, so who haven't yet received a diagnosis, and who might go to a GP and then receive that diagnosis. And even if that is February next year, we would welcome you to complete the questionnaire at that point in time.
And then the other thing I want to add is that you don't need to show us a letter from your GP confirming the diagnosis. We ask you to tell us, and truthfully, whether or not you have a diagnosis, but we don't ask you for that next level of information to confirm that diagnosis.
I think also for those who are struggling to get access to healthcare, struggling to get a diagnosis, there are charities around that will support, and there is advocacy support available through Action for ME. We've got lots of resources, and the 25% group also provide support. 25% group are working as part of our team. We have asked them to work alongside those people who are very severely affected, who do not have anybody in their support network to help them complete the form, and where their symptoms prevent them doing that. So that support is available. As Chris said, we do hope that most people will be able to complete online, either themselves or with the support of somebody, but we're really, really keen to ensure that those that are more severely affected can participate. And indeed, the science will be better if we get a range of people of ages, with different diversities and different severities. I'm going to ask another question about comorbidities. Are there any that could rule you out from taking part in this study?
So there are comorbidities that our peer review made sure that we would include in the questionnaire. And I think it is right for us not to detail those in particular what they are.
Great, thank you.
I add to that we still want you to fill in the questionnaire, that data set is still going to be massively important to us. And it may mean that we don't invite you to also send in a DNA sample, but it doesn't mean that you don't have ME. And it doesn't mean that your data isn't incredibly useful to us. And it's going to have a huge impact on how ME is understood and viewed for forever to come.
And what we would love to do is to ensure that in the future, we have a diagnostic tool that comes from DecodeMe that does this job better of diagnosing people more accurately. And this is the first step. So it may be imperfect. I appreciate that. But it is the first step, and it's the best step that we can make now.
Please do take part. You are still a valued participant to us.
Thank you. There's a comment from somebody who says they prefer the use of the word co-occurring, a psychotherapist who also has ME, and we appreciate that language is very important, which is why we're really keen to make sure that we tested this with people with severe ME, people online, and through our patient public involvement group. Question here about the data. Will the data collected in this study be publicly available?
So the answer is no, because it's your data. We have no right whatsoever to publish your data. The data will be made available to bona fide researchers who have a good reputation and good reason for the data from anywhere in the world. But they won't know that the data comes from individuals. We will have ensured that it's properly anonymized. But no, we would not allow anyone to gain access to any person's data.
I would also like to add to that our consent form specifically asks if you're happy for us to share your data with other researchers. So you can tell us that you only want your data to be used in DecodeMe, and that's fine, that's perfectly acceptable. Or you can tell us that you want us to be able to, through the systems we have in place, share that data anonymized with other bona fide researchers. But it's really your choice.
Great, thank you. There's a question here about whether we're asking sympathetic celebrities to share the recruitment page. Yes, we are. We have got a whole recruitment campaign strategy that's been pulled together. We've got a PR agency working with us. We've got a digital marketing agency working with us, but we still need your help. We have over, I think it's several hundred social media ambassadors working with us. So we are taking it very seriously because we are going to hit the numbers that we need to. But if you have any contacts and you know people that would be willing to support us, whether it's on TikTok, some of us don't really do TikTok, but other people do, and we do want people of all ages and backgrounds. So if you know anybody, social media influencers, celebrities that would be willing to work with us, then please do let us know. We've had questions about different, what's known in the research about heart involvement, tachycardia, etc. I'm afraid we're not going to have time to answer those today because today's webinar is specifically about the DecodeMe study. So I apologise if we don't take those questions. We've still got over 30 questions to get through, which we're not going to achieve because we've got a few minutes. But I'm just going to ask, is there any, the question for Sonya, I believe it's possible to get a diagnosis of ME confirmed by a GP if you develop the symptoms after having had COVID. Is this my belief too? Yes, it is. We would expect the GP to diagnose people with ME using the NICE guideline, the revised NICE guideline that was launched last year, you can still have a medical assessment and a diagnosis if you meet the criteria for ME. Another question, let me try to find some different questions here. Will we be checking the level of the immune system? Chris, my understanding is that's not part of what we're doing within the DecodeMe study.
We're studying DNA.
Yes.
And the DNA is the DNA that you were born with. And that was the risk, if you have it for ME, was hard-coded into your DNA at that point. And that's actually a benefit of what we do in genetics, because it may be that that a study of the immune system may not reveal the cause of a disease. It may actually be a consequence. And so we want to get back to the cause, because that's where interventions, drug therapies will work the best.
We've had a question about how many people have registered their intent to participate in DecodeMe. We've got around 30,000 people that are over 16 in the UK that have registered their intent. So we do encourage you, once you get that link, to go in and sign up, but also to help us recruit more people. And several questions around whether we'll be testing for anything else in the saliva. So as Chris just said, we're looking at DNA in this study. Somebody said, I was born abroad due to my father being in the army, but I'm a British citizen, live in the UK as my permanent address. Yes, you can still take part. Several questions about diagnosis. If you've been diagnosed by a healthcare professional, then yes, you will be able to participate. Could this lead to renaming the disease? Fed up with people saying I'm fatigued too. So I think we're going to finish on that one. A last comment from Sian and then Chris before we wrap up.
Just really grateful for your watching today, and really excited for the next steps and for the long-term outcomes of this project, which I think could change my life and hopefully the lives of many of you watching.
Thank you very much for watching. People tell me various things, but mostly they say that this is a disease that they wish to be called ME. That's what I call it.
Thank you. So just a couple of reminders. You can sign up, you can register your interest and get updates via the DecodeMe website, www.decodeme.org.uk. If you do that, we'll keep in touch with you. We'll let you know what's happening, and we will also tell you before we go public about what the date and when you can participate, and you can get ahead of the game and be first in line if you register your interest through the DecodeMe website. You won't have received the questionnaire already. What you will have probably filled in is just the registering your interest and giving us some data to help inform development of the study. So please don't worry. If you think you've already done it and want to do it again, you will get the link and you will be able to go in. If by any chance you're one of our 500 participants early on, you will be told. And if you start and you forget and you go back in, we're going to make it as easy as possible for you to participate. So some of those questions were answered earlier, and if you missed those, then you can also watch the webinar again. We'll put it out through the website and on YouTube so that you can watch it in installments. The last thing to say is that we need your help. You are part of our study. You're part of our study if you provide information through the questionnaire. You're part of our study if you provide DNA. You are part of our study if you help us recruit more people. You are part of our study if you just tell one person about how to participate. This is our study. It's the ME community study, and you are part of that. And we really value the input and the support that you're giving, and all the amazing messages that are coming through on Facebook and elsewhere, telling us that this study is giving you hope. We are doing everything we can to get this launched as soon as possible. We will launch in September and we will still finish on time. So thank you very much for all your support, and we look forward to speaking with you again at our next webinar. Thank you.